Welcome in, new Under the Lights podcast episode. Ben Spicer, Mark Henry here. Drew Johnson has the week off. We hope he and everyone in Florida affected by Hurricane Milton are okay. Impacted the schedule, of course, throughout the state of Florida. But more importantly, we hope that everyone is okay that was affected by Hurricane Milton. Seems like we just had that message a couple weeks ago from Hurricane Helene. I wasn't able to come on the show a couple weeks ago because of that. So, hearts, thoughts, prayers go out to everyone. I know we know a lot of people from Tampa, from Orlando, from that Central Florida area, through DR Sports, through DR7. So, definitely hope everyone is okay through the effects of that hurricane. But we've got someone we want to mention. We're going to mix up the show a little bit, Mark, this week because this performance was so good. We've got to start the show off with it. And that's Peyton Houston, 2027 quarterback that we've seen on the DR7 circuit, I think, since he was 13 or 14. And he's been promising as a prospect ever since then. He's continued to grow, he's continued to develop. Now at Evangel High School in Louisiana, and his stat line was absolutely ridiculous last week. Unfortunately, his team ended up losing 77-75. But here's his numbers, Mark: 53 for 68 passing for 817 yards. That was not a mistake. 817 yards and 8 touchdowns. Oh, by the way, he also had 88 yards and 2 touchdowns rushing. Not only is he a great athlete, great kid as well, 4.0 student, just recently picked up a Georgia offer. I believe it was Texas A&M, Baylor that were on him, 2 or 3 years ago. And you could start to see why. Like, he's putting up insane numbers. And the crazy part is he's going to have 2 more years to try and top that record. And he might just do it, Mark.
Man, absolutely, man. Peyton Houston is one of those guys that we've seen kind of rise up the rankings, rise up in his class in 2027. He's probably the number one prospect in the Louisiana area in the 2027 class. But the phenomenal numbers, when I saw that Friday night, I was like, wow. 76, 77 to 76 game as well. But to put up 10 total touchdowns, and he breaks the record for yardage in a game in a high school game for a quarterback. Just let that sink in a little bit. We're talking about a guy that can do it all. I mean, he's a great passer. He's a great athlete. He's a phenomenal baseball player as well. So, when college recruiters look at prospects, we talk about these things all the time in the annals of recruiting. Don't just limit yourself to one sport. Baseball, basketball, track and field, all of those things that Peyton Houston does, besides being a phenomenal quarterback, goes all into his mix of array of traits that makes him a great athlete at the quarterback position. But over 800 yards, I mean, 53 of 68. The completion percentage was there as well. So I mean, you insane. I mean, you couldn't put up these type of numbers on college 25. You know what I mean? So you mentioned the Georgia offer here recently, which was a big thing. And listen, Houston's on his way. You have a problem with Houston on the football field when he's doing his thing like that. And yes, we had a chance to see him on the DR7 circuit on multiple occasions, and he's always performed at a high level. But this is the type of thing we've been talking about here recently: is putting it together on the field
Right.
with the 7-on-7 now on Friday nights in the pads. And Clayton Houston hit it out of the park with that, man. Shout out to him. Shout out to Evangel Christian, who's having a pretty good year. They should be a playoff team coming out when they get to the playoffs in the Louisiana State playoffs. So definitely, man. Peyton Houston's playing at a phenomenal level right now.
He definitely made some national headlines. I've seen a lot of Peyton Houston posts, so deservedly so. That's just an insane stats. So we had to give him a shout out, especially seeing him and getting to know him over the years. It was really cool to see. We're definitely on the Peyton Houston bandwagon. We're big fans. So
Absolutely.
shout out to Peyton Houston. Speaking of making national headlines, I think you might have been at the game of the week, not just in Texas, but in the entire country on Friday night, and that was Duncanville and DeSoto. Big win for Duncanville. Looking at the score, was it as dominant as the score indicated? Kind of break it down for us, and what did you see? Who stood out in that contest?
Well, yeah, it was kind of what you saw, man. We've talked about this the last couple of weeks. I saw Duncanville against Waxahachie a couple of weeks ago, and Keelan Russell is just playing at a high level above his competition. 6 total touchdowns, over 400 yards. DeCorian Moore, 4 touchdowns in the first half, finished with 232 yards total. on 9 catches. These
Wow.
guys are phenomenal. They have a relationship that goes back to middle school. The continuity that they have together is just it's like pitch and catch. It's like backyard football. And there's one particular throw, and you've probably seen it, where Keelan gets out of the mud, rolls to his right, off of one leg in the corner to Decorian Moore, which was just a phenomenal play. I mean, it's something that you just don't see on the high school level like that. The accuracy, the ability to get out of traffic, to the pocket presence, to his just quickness with his trigger. I mean, it was just phenomenal. And seeing it at ground level, I was just astonished. It doesn't surprise me. Keelan's been doing this for a while. It's just the rest of the country's finally caught on to it. Alabama commit, 5-star recruit. He was phenomenal, and he's going to be the reason that Duncanville goes back to state. Is his high level of play. Now, also Trenton Yancey had a pretty good game as well. Spoke with him after the game. He's top 2027 wide receiver in the state of Texas and nationally. He had a big game. He's starting to come into his own in that offense. Everybody's going to look at Decorian Moore. Of course, Zachary Turner is a guy we talked about. Ace and Theus. But Yancey's continuity with Russell is starting to come to fruition and come to the surface now. Seeing them from the time I saw him at Waxahachie to the game at DeSoto this weekend, you can start to see that coming through. And I talked to Yancey about that after the game, and he started to get comfortable in that offense. He's going to be a guy to carry that tradition on here the next 2 years going into his senior year. But he's a guy with over 20 offers as well. Strong, very savvy route runner, and a guy that can really go up and get it. And on the last play, the touchdown play that he got to complete the score, and the final score was 42-20. Now, DeSoto did come back in the second half and played a little bit better, but it's just a difference that I think Duncanville's playing on a high level above their competition right now. They're the best team in the state for sure. Um, I had a chance to see North Shore as well. I think we're on a collision course to see those two teams again. If everything shakes out the way it should, I think North Crowley's going to have something to say about that as well. And Austin Westlake, depending on how it falls in Division One or Division Two, will probably have something to say coming out of that. I think Atascocita, I'll probably be in Houston. A little preview for that in a couple of weeks, October the 25th. Atascocita and North Shore lock horns. So that'll tell me more about Atascocita and if they have that chance to be, in that upper echelon of state contenders. But back to Duncanville, it's been there and done that business. Like you can tell that these guys, are ready for that next step as far as trying to get a three-peat when it comes to a state championship. And Coach Reginald Samples has these guys playing at a high level. It's phenomenal to see these guys, that you've seen from sophomores, junior year to senior year progress, and they're just so good at what they do. Decorian Moore is just a silky smooth route runner. He can get open in space. I mean, the curl routes, the underneath routes, the deep routes, the corner route, whatever route you want him to run, he can do it. And he's the leader in that locker room as well. And then listen, also played phenomenal on the defensive side of the ball. Played some cornerback, and he's the punter. So what can't Decorian Moore do? But I'll say this also, and then I'll close. Duncanville 2026 edge rusher Kevin Ford Jr. played a phenomenal game. He was one of those guys that stood out. And on the back end, Javion Holiday, the SMU commit at cornerback, had a phenomenal game as well as Braylon Edwards. There's another guy that doesn't get a lot of fanfare that I think is coming on. He's got double-digit offers, and I spoke with him after the game. One of those guys that can play corner or safety, and he was all over the field with his play. So it's a thing where Duncanville is coming together as a team at the right time, and it's very scary for their opponents in the rest of the field in the state of Texas.
I actually had two games. I went to one on Thursday night. It was here in Tallahassee in Florida. And then Friday night, highly anticipated Lee County and Coffee up in Georgia. Surprising results, I think, in both. Both were double-digit blowouts. We'll start with the Thursday night game. Rickards hosted Choctawhatchee. I believe I said that right. I'm just going to call them the Indians from here on because I don't want to butcher that, or Choctaw. But it was a 31-7 win for the Indians. Defense just absolutely dominated in that contest. We'll highlight a couple players from both sides. First off, Dante Core, 4-star Auburn commit. We got the chance to catch up with him and Mario Alloway after the game. You can check out that interview here on the channel. It's already a known name. He's an Auburn commit, as we said, known in the Panhandle, known in the state of Florida. But he balled out in all three phases of the game. Got to give him a shout out. He had a receiving touchdown on a deep ball on fourth down, came back to the ball, was a little underthrown, made the diving catch, great play. Also scoop and score for him. He recovered a fumble for a touchdown on a strip from Alloway. Speaking of Alloway, I liked his game as a 2026 defensive end. He was another one that made his presence known on defense, but also in special teams where he blocked a punt. Marc, you know I love seeing guys who can not only impact the side of the ball they start on, but also in special teams. And Alloway was that guy against Rickards. Also had a play where he came flying off the edge unblocked to record a tackle for loss. I asked him about that after the game. He said he noticed that Rickards had been rotating the left tackle, and so he just took advantage with the speed, he said. So not only a good player physically, but mentally as well. And I think we could see the offers start to roll in for him, and deservedly so. He said he has an offer from a JUCO so far, but I think that's going to change shortly because he's put up some impressive numbers this season. I like his film a lot too. So next up for the Indians, I got a spotlight 2027 running back Vontavious Keller, man. You talking about an absolute freight train. This guy's that. I would not want to see him in the hole whatsoever at an Oklahoma drill and practice. Max Preps has him at 5'8", 200 pounds. Sometimes they inflate those numbers a little bit, but I would not doubt that those are true at all. As a 2027, he's got plenty of time to still grow and get even more strong, which that's a scary thought because as the game went on, he seemed to break more and more tackles. The Rickards front seven is stout, too. It's probably one of the best in North Florida. You got Jalen Wiggins. You've got a guy that we're going to highlight coming up at linebacker and several other really good players on that defensive line. So that was impressive in its own right. I do want to say he had a couple fumbles that he was involved in. There was one early on in the game. I think that was just a bad snap exchange. It was kind of hard to see from my viewpoint. But he did have one late in the game, right on the goal line, too. But the game was well in check at that point. And I think that's something that he's definitely going to clean up. But, man, he's just such a physical runner and fun to watch. It's hard to believe he still has 2 more seasons ahead because his physicality is well beyond that of a sophomore. Next up, we'll go to the Rickards side now. Carlos Roll, linebacker. He seemed to be hit on nearly every play for the Raiders. Coming off a game against Fort Walton where he had 18 total tackles. This is a guy who continuously rakes up double-digit tackle numbers week in, week out. Since he came back from an injury earlier on this season. He missed the first 6 weeks, I believe, with a hairline fracture in his toe. But he's one of those sure tacklers. Like once he gets you in his grasp and his sights, you aren't going anywhere. So definitely get familiar with this 2026 linebacker. I think he's just scratching the surface, and I really loved his game. He was fun to watch. So 31-7, the Indians over the Raiders in that Thursday night game. Now let's go up to Georgia. A nice 2-hour drive for me, Marc, but it was well worth it getting to see Lee County. They were humming. They come out on top 48-14. And, of course, their quarterback, Weston Bryan, continued to impress. Georgia Southern commit. Both these teams entered the game at 6-0. And this is big for Lee County because this now makes 2 defending state champions that they've beaten in the last 3 weeks. They knocked off Thomas County Central a couple weeks back and now Coffee. So, Lee County firing on all cylinders, and it's a big credit to Weston Bryan. You know, a couple weeks ago we talked about him against Colquitt County. He had 4 or 5 rushing touchdowns, but this game it was his passing that most impressed me. His connection with 2027 wide receiver Jaden Upshaw was on point all game. Made some nice deep throws, but also was consistent in the intermediate game as well. Of course, made you feel him in the run game too. I told him after the game, I said, man, you got to be sore after these performances, brother. You're putting it all out there. And he just told me, he said, you got to love it. So some have compared him to Tim Tebow. And although he's right-handed, he definitely embraces that contact like Tebow did. Like, he is not going to slide. I don't think that's in his repertoire. He's coming straight at you. And it's funny, you know, I talked with him. I asked him about just his journey and his rise at quarterback. And he said coming into high school, he didn't even play quarterback. He was a linebacker and a tight end. And I said, yeah, I can see that. The way he just embraces contact and, you know, that physical nature of football. We spoke about Upshaw. It's really hard to believe that he's a sophomore. I think he's going to really make some noise moving forward in his career, but this season too. I mean, Lee County is more than just Brian and Usmani Chroma. And with them being balanced offensively, I think they've got to be one of, if not the favorite to take state. Again, we told you they beat 2 defending state champs in the last 3 weeks. So Lee County really just firing on all cylinders. We mentioned Chroma, recent Georgia commit. He's absolutely insane. If you follow high school football or recruiting, you knew that already. I don't need to tell you that. But he had this freakish run, Mark, where I think I sent it to you guys. I have no idea how he stayed balanced throughout that. Of course, he put on a show. He does week in and week out. But got to shout out his backup running back, Canton Williams. He's a junior. He got plenty of carries in this game once it was well in hand, and even before that, mixing in and spelling Chroma. I was able to find some running lanes, take off when he did. So I think Canton Williams, he just adds another element to that Lee County offense. And the defense obviously needs praise too, holding Coffee to 14 points. I didn't get the chance to see Florida commit defensive lineman Jeremiah McLeod the last time I saw the Trojans, but he was in there mixing it up, being a menace in the backfield alongside 2026 defensive end Martin Adkins. I like his game as well. He was creating chaos alongside McLeod, and those two are a force to be reckoned with. Just a couple that stood out on that Lee County defensive line. They also had a freshman, if the Max Preps roster is correct, they had a freshman who made an interception early on in the game. That's Montravius Clay. So a 2028 DB making a big play and a big stage for his team. Got to give a shout out to Montravius also. And real quick for Coffee, and we'll talk about our games coming up this week. They obviously tough sledding on offense, 14 points. They lost 48-14. Someone actually commented on our YouTube that they are playing a receiver at quarterback. So their offense was very run heavy, obviously, and their 2 touchdowns were actually on 3rd and long situations on screen passes where their guys made plays. One of those guys was Tyrese Woodgett, a senior running back who has had a stellar season thus far. I think he deserves some shine because he's one of those guys I feel is definitely under the radar. Just recently received his first Division I offer from Mississippi Valley State. Definitely feel he has the ability to play at the next level. Watch out for him over the remainder of the season. He was also clocked at 21.98 miles per hour in that game against Lee County, too. Needed every bit of it to score on that screen pass down the sideline, but he could move. I really like his abilities, too, and I think he's a name to know. He deserves some praise for Coffee. It was a tough night for Coffee. Shout out to the Coffee community. They've been through a lot. We talked about the hurricanes. Hurricane Helene really hit them hard, so hope everyone in Coffee is okay. And the Trojans are going to be fine, right? They're defending state champs. They'll figure out a way to get it out and manufacture some offense. And who knows? Maybe we could see these two teams meet again. But Lee County right now got to be one of the favorites. I think we could see them jump up those rankings. Not only in Georgia, I think they came in as the number 4 team in Georgia. They're a top 25 team in the nation, man. I mean, they were just that impressive to me overall. And what they've done in the last 3 weeks, I think they deserve to be in that top 25 in the entire country. Unfortunately, we don't do those rankings, or I'd put them in there. But hopefully the others are paying attention and they put the Trojans in there because they definitely deserve it. I will not be at a game this Friday night or this week. Florida State plays on Friday. They got Duke on Friday, so it's a bye week for me. So Drew Johnson he'll be back next week, filling in for me here on Under the Lights. We'll still have a show. Don't worry, I'll edit it all together. But do you know where you're going yet, Mark? Where are you going to be at next week?
I kind of got my eyes on a game that's got district championship implications surrounding it, and that's the Argyle Eagles and Mansfield Summit Jaguars, 2 teams, 5A Division II, District 3 5A. These 2 teams are usually perennial playoff teams, especially Argyle, which has a state championship pedigree. They're kind of back this year a little bit. They got one of the top quarterbacks in the DFW area in the 2026 class, and McGuire Gasperson has been playing very well. Braden Box, a tight end that I'm interested to see. And then Summit's one of those teams that always has a bunch of players that you definitely want to see. This is a big game. They took care. Argyle took care of Arlington Seguin this week, which was a team on the cusp of doing big things. Seguin, this was their second loss in the last 2 weeks in that district after being undefeated. And Argyle showed me something by taking care of those guys because Seguin's got some talent. And I thought that Argyle, if they matched up with these guys well, that would tell me a lot. So definitely wanted to get eyes on Argyle. That was a big game this week, but the Duncanville DeSoto game kind of trumped that one. So this will be a chance for me to check out Argyle this week against Mansfield Summit. And the winner of this game probably most likely takes the district title, and they'll be the number 1 seed coming out of the playoffs. So definitely an interesting game, a game that we're going to have our eyes on this week.
Looking forward to that. Definitely make sure you check out the YouTube channel here on DR Sports. Got highlights from some of the games that we mentioned. Marc has some interviews from the Duncanville DeSoto matchup as well. Hit that like button on the video if you enjoy it. Leave us a comment, share it with your friends, and subscribe to the channel. Most importantly, we've been growing a lot over these last couple months, and we couldn't do it without you. So definitely appreciate your support and everyone who's tuned in week in and week out here to the Under the Lights podcast. For Marc, I'm Ben. We'll see you back next week for another episode right here on the DR Sports YouTube. Until then, y'all be safe, and we'll see you next time.